Without naming names, what are some of those things that you've heard circulating that you don't necessarily agree with, and why?
Here's one which I don't agree with, which is bulking up. You
Mm.
know, a lot of people now, it's in the natural sort of circles. This is my thoughts on this and my logic on this. A lot of people now put a lot of weight on in the off season. Now, that used to be me back in the day when I first started competing. I used to put a few good pound on, and then I used to diet down for a competition and wonder why I had no chest or shoulders left. Here's the problem with this is when you've got a lot of weight to come off, for every £5 roundabout, this is not science, but for every £5, I always say you're going to lose a couple of pounds of muscle. Even if you're on steroids, you are going to lose some muscle tissue along with a lot of weight. So as the years went on, I sort of thought to myself, why am I putting like 20 something pound on and then dieting off again? And the last muscle built is the first muscle to go. So if I've built a good chest in the off season, the chest is feeling really full, by the time the competition comes around, because I've had £20 to lose, that's on my percentage of weight. That's like somebody taller gaining 30 and 40 pounds. By the time I've got to the competition, my chest is disintegrated, gone to nothing. Muscles have like depleted so much. So my thought was right, I'm not going to do that no more. I'm not going to put a lot of weight on. And I did this with clients for many, many years as well, with great success. So I would only have you put maybe, depending on your size again, I only ended up putting between £5 and £7 on over competition weight, which only barely smoothed me out, but it gave me enough of a covering to allow me to train hard. And then when I dieted for a competition, I would do 12 weeks competition dieting and I would be ready in 6 weeks. And then what I would do was hold it for 6 weeks or start increasing my calories. And everybody's like, what are you doing? Why do you look so full and so? Well, it's because I've not lost muscle. You're not going to lose any muscle if you've only got £7 to drop off. You see where I'm coming from? For a natural, it's worth bulking up too much. I think that you should be like a bodybuilder all the time and eat really good. That's my opinion again.
I want to say or highlight this because obviously there might have been some benefit to that at that time when you were younger. I don't know how young you were when you did that first bulk up. Yeah, go ahead.
25, 30, somewhere around there. Yeah. You know, so since probably 27, 28, that's when then I won my first major shows at 30. And I didn't actually become my best till probably about 47. And it was a slow process. But the slow process was I was the same sort of size and the same sort of build because I aren't going to get any bigger. Training from 14 to 30, I've basically maxed out my size, really. And I've been the same sort of weight and size because if you're natural, you can only gain to what your frame is going to hold naturally. If you're small frame, small boned like me, you're not going to be a big guy.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned that because I was talking to Mitch. I don't know if you caught his most recent episode that I spoke with him about elite body fat distribution. And I say this word elite, like how you distribute body fat, I think also plays a big role because if majority of your body fat's going to your glutes or your thighs even, it might not be as hurtful to you as if it's going towards your lower abdominal wall or your midsection. Like that hurts more as far as not only appearance, but even the way you might feel or, of course, look. So appearance, that's a big thing. So I think that also plays a role in how much weight you can gain in the quote unquote off season and feel good about yourself and feel good just in general, I think. But what's your take on that?
Well, I think if you're going to be a competitive bodybuilder, you shouldn't be gaining a great deal of weight in between competitions. Once you've made your initial sort of gain, and you maybe can gain, afford to put a little bit more body fat on when you're younger because your body metabolize that. But as you're getting into your years when gaining about as much size, and you're only going to gain fractionally detailed differences throughout your body, you shouldn't gain that much weight. But as far as like putting distribution of body fat on, I'm lucky in that respect that I carry it evenly. There isn't an area where I'll get out of line at all. So for me to put 7 or 8 pound on, it'll smooth me out just generally and just make me look a little bit fuller everywhere. I mean, to get that minute detail where the separation's coming in between the muscles, like, the peak on your biceps and how sharp you get. There's intermuscular fat in there, which is in between the muscle fibers where the striations start to come through. That takes time. And if you're having to diet off a huge amount of weight to begin with, you're not going to pull it into the competition as good as you could be.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's say that you're in your off season peak right now with the knowledge that you have, the wisdom that you have. How would you go about your off season now as far as how heavy would you get from your stage weight? Let's say your competition weight is 143, 144, like you mentioned, elite level conditioning. How heavy would you see yourself getting in the off season in order to put on muscle? Like your goal is still maximizing muscle growth. Where do you see your weight being?
I as I see it now, if I'm going to compete next year, I'm weighing 142 at the moment, and I'm like very lean at this present time. Not competition lean, but still very lean. I've still got separation in my legs, and I've got abdominals and everything because I've kept my weight down on purpose. I've not tried to strive to get any bigger. Whereas now I'll need to get a little bit bigger. So if I was going to compete next year, probably September, October of next year, what I need to do now is slowly gain weight up to about 148, 150. So put about another 7 or 8 pounds on over what I am, but slowly do it. I'm talking a pound every 2 to 3 weeks, maybe even a pound a month. And that all I'm going to do there is train hard, like I'm doing, and progressive, try and gain strength in the exercises I pick and choose to what suit me and make my muscles get a good ache, and I can get a good feeling from what doesn't hurt the joints. So what I'll do there is I'll progress in strength, because the catalyst to gaining muscle is obviously got to be the training first and foremost. Then I will keep a track of my calories and slowly increment them to allow me to get to the weight I want to be. Once I get to about 148, 150, whereas I'm hovering in between that, I'll hold that weight for months on end. I might stay at that weight for 3 or 4 months before I even decide that I'm going to diet, because that is a good working weight for me. At my size, I should look nice and full at that, and I should be fairly strong on the selected exercises. And then when I decide I'll diet, I will probably end up being around about what I am now, maybe a pound or 2 less. So I might end up being 140 at the competition next year, which will be good. I'll be a few pounds under my best, but I'll have a body which will look slightly different than it was when I was younger. You know, I'm going to maximize what I can get at this age I am now.
So would you take that approach now that you're doing? Would you have adopted that, again, in hindsight, of course, would you have adopted that in your 30s or 40s as well, learning from experience?
Yeah, I did. Yes, I did actually start doing that. And I started it probably about 28 or so. When I mentioned that, I would thought, look, I'm not going to put a great deal of weight on now. And I was known for that. People used to say, oh, Ian Duckett, he's always in shape, you know, because I would only put like a few pounds on. And every time I would go to a competition with a client or something, somebody would say, are you dieting? No, I said, no, I just keep lean, because I didn't bulk up. And I learned early that that wasn't working for me. And it made a huge change in how weaker muscles stayed on me. Because remember I said, last muscle gained, first muscle to go. So if you've like been prioritizing building your chest and your shoulders or your arms or anything, your back, and then you've got a lot of weight to lose, you will lose it off that last muscle built. It will go from that area. I mean, it's okay if you're on stuff, you know, you're going to hold on to a lot more muscle. If you're natural, you've got to play it smart. You've really got to do that.
That's very encouraging. So I would even say, and you can speak to this, I'm sure, also from a maintaining strength perspective, it was probably much better as well. Because if you're bulking up 30 pounds above and then you have to lose that and you're not holding that body fat percentage, because obviously why would you if you're going to compete? Your strength falls off quite a bit. You're just not used to being at that weight, the leaner levels of body fat. Whether you're staying at the higher levels of body fat for long periods or not, either way, you're not going to be able to maintain strength as well as if you're kind of hovering around a similar spot majority of the year. You're adapting to that weight with that level of strength that you've attained. I think there's something to be said for that as well.
Because what's happening is muscle is lifting the weight when you're at a heavier weight, but also there's a lot of leverage difference. Your arms might be thicker, your chest is heavier because you're pounds and pounds heavier, so your range of motion's not the same on your bench press. Your waist is bigger, so when you've got your belt on, you're supported more when you're squatting, because weight moves weight. So you think you're getting really strong. Yeah, you are gaining some strength, but I would get stronger as I got too close to a competition. I would be actually lifting more weight as I dropped weight down, because it was only like losing 7 pounds or so towards the competition. The reason being is because my mind was more focused on, you know, obviously the competition coming up, so I would train, you know, like an animal towards the end, and it would keep the muscle on me frame, because if you use it or lose it, you've got to keep it on there. Right. If you can't train hard, you're going to lose some muscle as well, can't you? And your energy levels are not good. And this was a really good thing as well as metabolism, because to give you an idea of this, and I mentioned this I think on John's podcast, and I mentioned to a few people before, if I was to count my calories as dieting for a competition, let's say 2007 for instance, when I won the world. Now I probably started dieting, I was maybe eating 4,800 calories to 5,000 calories a day. Now not all of them were meals. I used quite a lot of meal replacements in those days, and a lot of olive oil and stuff as well, as to keep my calories high. And it also is very good for inflammation, is olive oil, so I was using, you know, a lot of spoons of that as well. So then I slowly incremented my calories down and got to where I looked really, really sharp, not shredded but sharp enough. Then a lot of people would carry on dieting, and there was no CV involved either, so I'm not wearing myself out. I wasn't doing any aerobics at all to body fat loss. It was just increment calorie loss. So let's say down now, I got maybe 6 weeks out from the competition, I'm on to 2,800 calories or something like that. So I start incrementing the calories back up again, and this would speed my metabolism up. By the time the competition came round, I'd be back up to 4,800 or more because I had to keep piling the calories in. Think of your metabolism like a fire. It was burning and I was having to throw fuel on it to keep it going. So by the time the competition came around, I was eating more than when I started. Looked fuller and fuller and fuller. So I got tighter and fuller as the competition went because I built my metabolism rather than killing it. Does that make sense?
So you were basically eating up into the show.
Yeah. Okay. And I did that for many years after that as well. And it worked really well.
I've heard this before, actually. There was a few bodybuilders that I spoke with on the podcast that mentioned they do something similar to that nature. I don't think it's as popular, or maybe it's not as well known, to approach it in a way that makes sense, like how you're mentioning. Like it requires a specific level of skill, if you will, to do that in the right way.
Mind as well, because it messes with your mind that you're eating that much food. But when you see yourself changing every day and you see yourself looking better and better as the weeks go on, then it sells itself really. And I've done this many times with clients since when they've been getting ready for competitions. I get them lean and then I go, right, I'm going to start putting your food on. I go, you're doing what? You're putting, they're frightened because they're frightened that they're going to put weight on. And they don't. If you're eating the right food and you're fueling your body and you're training hard, it'll just go to keeping you nice and full. And then if you're fuller and your muscles are fuller, your energy levels are higher, so you can actually train harder. So you hold on to more muscle tissue, which means because you're holding on to more muscle tissue that you're burning more body fat. So you burn every little ounce of body fat off your system and end up really, really, really sharp.
If I understand correctly, and I can understand the logic behind why you had the shoulders and arms day between the chest and back and the legs day, is because of deadlifts.
Not only that, is because if you think chest and back workout is really hard and heavy, and you've got deadlifts in there also. Now, shoulders and arms, no matter how heavy or hard you're going at them,
that's true.
Nowhere near as hard on your